State of the Union with John King, CNN Sunday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern.
Two leading senators in both the foreign policy and military debate and on domestic policy. Democratic Senator Evan Bayh of Indiana is here with me in Washington, and Republican Senator Bob Corker joins us from Tennessee. Let me start. You just heard Secretary Gates, and Senator Bayh, let me start with you because you're on the Intelligence Committee. He says there's no doubt this is an illicit nuclear site. Iran has now acknowledged it exists. The United States has made it public. We'll have its first conversations across the table with Iran coming this week. In those conversations, should there be any carrots at this moment or all sticks?
Well, it needs to be both, John, but more sticks, frankly, at this moment than carrots. We've tried a variety of inducements to the Iranians over the years, being included in the global economic trading system, a number of other things. Frankly, none of that has worked. What they respect more than anything is strength. They're contemptuous of weakness. The one time the Iranians have actually reached out to us behind the scenes and offered to be cooperative was following the invasion in Iraq, where we had invaded first Afghanistan, then Iraq, and they began to think, whoa, are we next? So I think it needs to be mainly stiff economic and financial sanctions with the possibility of other options lurking in the background if they don't change their behavior. That gives us the best chance of getting them to give up their program.
And Senator Corker, should the United States sit down one-on-one with Iran right now, or is that in and of itself a gift they don't deserve?
I think the P5+1 meeting that is set up this week is the right venue. I think the table couldn't be set better for that meeting, and I agree with Senator Bayh. I think we should be very tough on them. The fact is, the world community is now, I think, more united than ever to confront Iran, and this is information we've had for some time. I think making it public this week and Iran actually coming forward and saying that it was true certainly turns the table, and I think we have a tremendous opportunity for the first time in a long time for a breakthrough.
Well, so let's consider the moment. You will have this meeting this week. Iran has been caught, essentially, defying its commitments to the world community, but everyone is saying we'll have these meetings and then maybe have sanctions down the road. Some would say you might have more leverage if you impose the sanctions now and then had the meeting so that Iran had a steeper hill to climb. Would that be a better approach?
Well, sooner is better than later, John. Time is a wasting here. But the problem is, in order for sanctions to be effective, you've got to get the Russians and the Chinese on board. That may take a little time. So if it's just us and our Western European allies, we could do that very quickly. But the Chinese are now providing a third of the gasoline for Iran. That really is their Achilles heel. And so to be effective, you really need the Chinese to come to the table, and they're notoriously slow in these kind of things. The Russians have been making more positive noises recently, but I suspect they may take at least a month or two to nail down on exactly what we're going to do.
And so what happens, Senator Corker, if the Chinese are, as Senator Bayh puts it, notoriously slow? The United States have many options if the Chinese are reluctant to go along with very tough sanctions?
Well, we have lesser options sanctions-wise if they do not go along. But I think instead of moving ahead, let's see how quickly they're going to let our inspectors in. The fact is, we know they're probably today clearing out evidence of what they're doing there. So how quickly are we going to get our inspectors in? How assured will the Chinese be as to what was happening there? This facility, clearly, I went through a classified briefing Friday. This facility, I can assure you, was not set up for commercial purposes, and I think the Chinese have just seen this intelligence this week. To allow them to digest this, hopefully to become more rigidly opposed to what's happening there is important. And again, we've got a few weeks here in front of us that are very important. I don't know how the table could be better set, as I said earlier. Let's let this play out over the next couple of weeks. I think we now see, though, Israel had this same intelligence. I think we now see why they've been certainly very concerned about what's happening there, as it does impose an existential threat to them, and I think we can see why they've been very concerned.
Well, let me ask the question this way, Senator Bayh. An intelligence success here, but is this the only one? What do we know, or what don't we know? Are you worried about that?
Well, as you know, we can't discuss specifics on the air, John, as much as you might like that. But let's just say Iran is more open than North Korea, but we have imperfect knowledge with regard to Iran. And one of the difficulties with a military strike, and all options need to be kept on the table, frankly, for one of the purposes of bringing the Chinese about. But one of the problems with a military strike is, by definition, you can only attack what you know where it exists. So the possibility does exist that there may be other sites about which we are simply unaware at this time.
And Senator Corker, when you heard Secretary Gates saying, look, all options should be kept on the table, but let's be candid, essentially was his point. He said a military strike would set them back. You couldn't take them out, especially because they're reinforced underground facilities. Is that the right posture for the administration? I mean, if you're the president of Iran right now, you essentially know the Obama administration says, well, sure, the military option's on the table, but it's not so great.
Well, look, I think we need to also take into account there are movements inside Iran that have not existed in decades. And the fact is, there's a lot of turmoil internally. I think we need to look at which sanctions actually cause that to move ahead. Military action certainly would unify the country very quickly against us. So, look, military options certainly needs to be on the table. I know Israel certainly has their antenna up in that regard, but the fact is we have an opportunity with all of the countries now, the P5+1, to actually put sanctions in place that will do severe damage. Again, let's let that play out. Let's don't jump ahead. We've got a couple of weeks here that I think are going to be very, very important, and we haven't had this opportunity that I can remember.
Senator Corker describes the stakes. I want you to come in, but I want to ask you a question about what we hear from our government. This is the National Intelligence Estimate. It was published in November of 2007. This is a public document. At the moment this was published, the Bush administration knew about this facility in Iran. That was knowledge of the intelligence community at that time, according to Secretary Gates. But this document says that the government has high confidence that Iran has stopped the weapons aspect of its nuclear program. Help me out here. If they say there's no doubt this facility is to develop nuclear weapons, Senator Corker says he saw the briefing, he has no doubt. Why would our government put out a document that says, well, they're not at the nuclear weapons business anymore?
John, I objected strongly to the wording of this estimate at the time because I did think it was misleading, and you need to look at a footnote in there that actually explains what's going on. There are three different parts to a nuclear program. One is getting the fissile material. They are going rapidly ahead with that part of it. Second is a delivery mechanism, ballistic missiles, that sort of thing. They're going rapidly ahead with that aspect as well. The third is the design of a warhead. And that is what they apparently suspended some years ago. But they've got the designs. This is something else they lied about. They got the designs, the know-how to, in fairly short order, go forward with that. So the NIE made it look like they suspended the entire program, when in fact it was just one component of it, which they could restart on fairly short notice.
And lastly, on this point, Senator Corker, Iran knows now, the world is watching, and these conversations, the negotiations are about to begin this week, and we wake up this morning, they're testing a multiple missile launcher, they're testing short-range missiles, they're planning to test a long-range missile. In terms of a signal to the world about how you view the moment, what does that tell you?
Well, I think that, look, this exercise was pre-planned. I think the world is going to be watching tomorrow when they launch the Shahab 3 to see if it actually works. In the past, it hasn't. That is the missile that has the ability to deliver to Israel and other U.S. bases a nuclear warhead, so we're going to be watching that. But these exercises, again, were pre-planned. They have nothing to do with what's occurred.
They could have stopped.
They could have stopped them. They could have stopped them. Again, I don't look at it as a provocation. But you know, again, we've got a couple weeks here to use our heads. I think we have a great opportunity. I'm sure Israel is glad that finally the world community is focused on Iran in a way that they believe to be appropriate, and let's take advantage of it.
John, can I make a quick point? If we want to try and force Iran to give up their nuclear program without resorting to military conflict, we need to focus on energy. First, the imports of refined petroleum products into Iran. For another 12 months, that's a real Achilles heel for them. We could really hurt their economy. In the longer term, the connection to energy is their exports of oil. A Russian expert in their energy minister told me in Moscow a year ago the Iranians are terrified about the possible cutting off of their exports of oil. Because we're so dependent on their oil, the rest of the world, we can't do that without delivering a bloody blow to the world economy, but that's what would really hurt them.
I need to get a break in here, so it's a yes or no question. If the Chinese wouldn't go along then, should the world community, absent the Chinese, put up a blockade of some sort?
The Chinese have a real incentive to go along to prevent that very kind of prospect.